Welcome back. So primarily today we're going to be looking around hooks still, and hooks are one of the very major building blocks in React. And you've seen the most two common hooks which you have. Those are use state and use effect, which you saw during your training. And use state is used to manipulate values and help the component to re-render, causing reactivity. And for use effect is used to listen to maybe a particular change, and if the change happens maybe on a variable, it will be able to determine that okay, this change has happened. So firstly, those are not the only two hooks available. There are lots of different hooks. There is apart from use state and use effect, there is useRef, there is use callback, there is use context, there is use memo, and a whole bunch of hooks. Today we will look at a few of them, and then so that you know that okay, these are the hooks that exist. So I will going to the sample application that we're going to do, which I'm going to code very fast so that we have an idea of what we're looking at, is going to be a simple list of students that we're going to manage. And for that list of students, we're going to look at how to use one of the hooks, useContext. Now, useContext hook it's similar to useState, but then with useContext, it makes it possible that multiple components can have access to the same state at the same time. So I'm going to open something like Miro, or I'm just going to open Figma. I'll just design something briefly here so that we can see it. I'll open a new Figma board. Hopefully I have oopsie, not this one. Go back to home. Okay. So where do I create a new one? Design. Yeah, maybe I should instead create a jam. Okay, so let's take, for example, we have a system, we have our very basic stuff that we want to do today, which is around managing a list of students. So your application is to create a list of students, and the student has just one property, and that is the name. So I would say if we have our design like this, I'm going to put a frame here, and let's say a rectangle. This is one rectangle and another one. So fill this with so let's say I'm going to say this is add student, right? And this is student 1, for example. This is students. Why is it going behind? I have to bring it to front. Okay, student 2, and we have student 3. So if this, for example, is our basic application, and you have this is a component to add students. So each time you see this box, this is a component and this is a component. Now, if you say add students, and this is student 1, student 2, student 3, and definitely these students are coming from they're coming from an array of students. Now, if I want to add a student, if I have a component, this component to add a student, this component, if it has to add to this array, it means that it has to send data to the parents, and then from the parents now it sends it to this child. And you're going to have lots of things around you call prop drilling. Now with prop drilling, it means that the parent is the one that is keeping the data, and this add student has to communicate with the parent, and then the parent sends back the data to the child. Now maybe we've talked too much. Let me literally do some code here. So for example, if you have, let's say, const students, Okay. And let's say const dummy students. Name is Martin, Peter, John, Jill. Nope. Okay. And we say this is going to be dummy students. And here we come and say we want to display the list of students. Where are we having something wrong? Oh, okay, I've not imported useState. Okay. I don't know if we understand everything that is happening here. This is already clear from what we had seen from the various lectures, right? Okay, great. So I see good number of thumbs up. Now, if we say that we need a new maybe an input field, that when we put an input field, it is going to permit you to add a new student. Now, for us to do that, we can come here and say div, and this div is going to have an input tag and a button. Now, that input tag and button is for us to be able to add a new student. And for us to add a new student, we're going to say const student's name, set student's name, and the value here is student's name. I'm going a bit fast because I want to assume that most of you already understand this. Okay. So this one, if I put a student name, let's say Joe, the student gets added. Martha, the student gets added. Leah, the student gets added. But now, over time, what can happen is your component becomes so this single file, you cannot put everything in this single file. If we want to keep this data, this in a separate component and this in a separate component, it means that when I am adding these new students, they have to share the same array. Are we together? Because this add students, this part of the code, it modifies this array, right? By saying that it is setting a new student, and this part of the code displays the array. So we want to separate it into two things. We want to separate it into a list of students component and an add student component. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new file. We call it lists. We call it lists of students.jsx, and we create another one called add students.jsx. Now, for us to be able to achieve this, we know that our list from our app.jsx, this is the part that handles the list of students, right? And it is a part that handles the add student, and this is a part that handles the list of students. So we're going to extract this into its own component and extract this into its own component. Then we're going to import both of them and use them here. These are things that you've already done. So I'm going to copy this, and I'll go to add student function add. I can just say const add students return this, and then we're going to say export default. Now it is looking for this student's name. It's not seeing it because it is coming from the other file. I'm going to comment this one for now, and I'm going to comment this on click. And I'll go now also back to app.jsx and copy this list of students and bring it here. Const list of students. Not supposed to be like this. Yep. Now it is having an error because it's not seeing this. I'm just going to comment this out. Okay. So at this point, we know that instead of using this, all of this, we're going to have the component add students. So first of all, we import the component, import add students, and we import also the component list of students. Now where we have all of this, we replace it with add students. I will replace this one with list of students. Save this. Thus far, are we okay with it? Am I too fast? Am I too slow? Are we understanding the flow? If you don't understand the flow, please, you can leave a message on the chat so that I know where you're missing. You're finding it difficult. Okay. So the thunder silence means everybody's okay and following. Now, once we have done this, you see that there is this method to add students, and there is this state that holds the student that you want to add, and there is this that holds the list of students. Normally, what you have to do is you have to send this data into, you have to send this list of students into the list of students, like it's giving me suggestion, and I have to also pass this add student method into this, which I'm going to do for now. So I'm going to say students equal to that, and I'm going to receive that as a prop here, and we're good. Do we understand this? Do we understand this? Okay, you don't understand this. Who doesn't understand also? Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm saying that this list of students, which is this part, right? I'm saying that I want you to receive, I'm sending these students, which is all of these dummy students, I'm sending it into this component, and I want to call it students. And when I get into the component for list of students, this is it I'm structuring as a prop, and I'm using a map function to display the list of students. So it's simply saying that if I come here, if I come to this Figma design, which we have started, but we later on abandoned. Where is it? Good. So it's saying that there is a list of students in this parent, and this is the list of student component. Why this thing keeps showing up? This like this is the list of students component, all of this. And I am sending in this data, students. You see, we have Peter, Martin, John. So this is likely Martin, John, Peter, because I'm sending this students data into the list of students. So I'm passing a prop into a component, and the component can use that prop now here. Did we do the structuring? Okay, so I'm getting checks. It shows that a couple of people did, but you can always, I'm going to record this, I'm recording this. You can always come and watch the video after if you have difficulties. Now we've been able to send this list of students into the list of students component. Now we want to say that each time that when we're inside here, we want to say that when the user clicks on this add student button, let me pull this back. Each time the user clicks on this add student button, what should happen is it should take this data and send it back to the parent, and the parent should add to the list. I will take that again. When the user clicks on this button, you see this handle add students. It's supposed to be triggered, and this parent is supposed to add a new student. Are we together? Okay. So this is the state that holds the student that we're about to add. It doesn't have it's not of no use here. We're going to cut it and we're going to take it here. Let's not forget to import, import our, and then we can use this here, and we can use this. Now, as we type, this should work. But when we click on add student, nothing happens because we have not tied this onClick function to any other thing. So what we're going to say is each time that we do a handle click, we're going to call handle add students, and that handle add student is coming from the parent. I'll just do the code and I explain it a bit later. Let me explain this here clear. Something is wrong somewhere. It seems like there's a mistake. Let me check the console. Okay, I was making a mistake there. Okay, I take it again. Each time that let's close things that are not useful. I'll put them side by side. I'll put them side by side so that we can be able to better appreciate. Okay, let's take it again. There is the add student component, which is this. This is the add student component. And what we are saying is each time that the user changes the input, it should save it in this state. Is that clear? So we cannot really go on map functions now. I think Yaya had done map functions, but I'll send some resources about map functions on the group so you can understand that. So this part is saying that when the value changes, it should update this state. And this is the value. Are we clear on this? Yes. Okay. Now, this button, when I clicked on this button, what is supposed to happen? This button is supposed to call a function called handle add student and pass the parameter student's name. But this handle add student is in the parent. The function is in the parent. The function is not defined. If you look at it, there is no function that has been defined inside this file called handle add student. It is in the parent. So the parent, the add student component says, I want to add a new student. So I'm going to send the student's name to the parent. And when I send the student name to the parent, the student now is going to be added at the level of the parent. Are we together? So the child sends information back to the parents through a method and says, once I finish typing here, I'm going to send the information back to you, the parent, and you're going to add it to the list. Now, the point of, as you keep doing this, the data becomes so big, and maybe your component becomes so heavy that you may need to be passing props around. You may need to be calling this function. It goes back to the parent comes to the child, it goes back to the parent, and that is not the nicest thing that you should do, because you may end up in a state where you call prop drilling, where one parent passes to a child passes to a child passes to another child, and you're going to have a lot of dependencies going down. You hear about prop drilling. And to solve that, you can use now a context. The context is like a store. It's like a use state, but it's a use state that all components can access. So the use context is like a component that all is like a use state. if you think about it like a store that all other components can access without necessarily passing the parameters to the child, to the next child, to the next child. So that's what we're going to look at, the first hook for today, which is use context. Now, for use context, what we're going to do is we are going to create a context called student context. Now, this is how it works. On my file here, I'm going to create a new file called student context.jsx, right? Now, once I've created this student context.jsx, let me remove this part. I will import create contexts, use contexts, use state from React. Now, I will explain how each of these works. First thing is I want to say const students context is I want to create a context. First thing, maybe I should just write the code and then I'll explain to you people, since we don't have much time. We create a provider, we use student context, and good, and we return. Okay, don't worry about that error. So I explain it how it works. So this student context is a provider. You will see providers in the future, but it's a provider and it wraps and has children. So this student is the same thing that we saw on the list of students. Not on the level of the app. Yes. So what we're doing is we are moving these students into a global store, which is a context, so that this guy can access it without passing through the parents, and this guy can access it without passing through the parents. I'll take a pause, and if somebody has something which they are not understanding very well, please ask me. I don't want to run and then finish and people have not understood. You can unmute your mic, eh? Yes, Johan. Yes, Johan, you can unmute your mic.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. So far, the explanations that are really going very, very fast. Like the following up, it's really difficult.
Okay.
I get the concept. Like I get the concept, but now once I'm trying to maybe put the codes and align them on my head, you're already like 4 steps ahead. So it's really difficult following you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Is anybody facing that same problem? Okay.
Well, this new concept I just started, this use context.
What I get the point that you people are not. I'm going a bit fast. Maybe it's because of time constraints, so that we can be able to understand how, or we can be able to have a general idea, and then you can come back later on and watch it. But let's say, where did you get lost? Let's start from there. Where did you get lost? Where did any person get lost? Let me see where I can pick up back from. Yes, Johan.
Please, sir, if you can just get back at the level of list of student components, yeah, including it the list of students component. At the level of mapping from here, please, if you can just take it from here, I believe
Okay.
it will be helpful.
Okay.
For me personally.
Okay, you know how to use map functions.
Yes, sir.
So you know what this does, right? And you know that this one generates this list. Is it okay? Okay, cool. And this list of students is inside the app.jsx, this list of students. And the students that is being sent as props, this is the students that is being sent as props into the list of students. So this one is all of this because we have these are the names of the students. So I send these names of students into the list of students, and the list of students does what? It takes them and does a map function and displays them like this. Is that okay? Okay, cool. I'm glad I'm having hands now. Then for art students, do you even understand how this art students works in relation to the parents? Let me put this art student side by side. Okay, so I see people don't understand. Let's take at this level of this point, right? Even if we do only 2 hooks this evening or just 1 hook, it's still very okay. But once you get the concepts, you're going to be able to use them in almost all the other hooks. Now, this is a text input component, and this text input component, when the input is changing, the data is supposed to be saved somewhere. So when the data changes, it saves in the student name state. Is that okay? So each time that I type a name here, the value is going to be saved in student's name, and it's saved by calling the set student's name. So set student name is a function that changes the value of student's name. That's okay, right? Okay. Now, this component, this student's name, what needs to happen is this student's name, this new student I'm typing like this, it's supposed to come and add into this list, right? Because after I type it, it's inside this, but the list of students does not display this one student's name. This is just a single student's name that it's not yet in this array, in the students array. Are we clear? So now, this button, which is add student, it says that each time I click on this button, on click, you should call a function called handle student. You should call a function called handle student. And this function called handle student, I did not define it inside this component. It is defined in the parent. App is the parent, add student and list of students are the children. Do we accept that? So the parent is called app, this is it, and the children are list of add student and list of students. But then list of students displays what the parent sends. So for example, the parent says, I am giving you this list of students, display it. So this is the child which is displaying, and this is the child which is in charge of adding. But now this child in charge of adding, for it to be able to add, it needs to tell the parent that this is the information that I want to add. Are we together? And for it to tell it that this is the information that I want to add, it is going to call a function that is passed as a prop. Handle. So it's saying that I am going to define a function called handle add student. Look, let me change the name so that it's a bit clearer. Let me call this parents handle and this is parents handle, and I call this child handle student, and I call this child, no, this is child. Where did I miss something? Parents handle. Oh, okay. No, I think I missed. Yes. Let me be sure that it works. Okay. I'll take it now. So there is a function in the parents called parents add student. And that function is linked to a function called child add student. And that child add student is inside here. So each time I call child add student, I send in the name. It is going to call parent add student and receive that student's name. Is it making sense now? So this is child add student, which is inside the component. It is more like this child add student is related to this parent add student. So this is a prop, it's a function prop that is being passed. So each time I call child add student and I pass in the student name, what I'm simply saying is this. Let me put it in a longer format. Let me drag this. What I'm simply saying each time I call child add student is saying that if I call child add student, what you should do is you should call parent add student with the student name that's sent to you. And when you call this parent add student with the name I've sent to you, what should you do? You should take the previous student's value, you spread it, and then you add me this new student, and we are good to go. Let me put a console.log here, you put C. So this is new student. I'm going to put a console.log here so that we can see how it goes. Oops, how do you change this and go down? Okay, down, yes. So each time I type, let's say Joe, and I add, you see they say this is at level of the parent. New student's name is Joe, and I'm going to take this Joe and I'm going to add it to the list of the existing previous students to make a new list. Is it making sense now? Okay, Lafak, you can turn off your video to optimize your bandwidth. Now, if you look at this, all of this that we have done, it means that if we have to add another component that will do something like shuffle the students, maybe do another thing, it means that the parent is in total control. Everything has to move from parent to child, back to parent to child, back to parent to child. And when you move it from parent to child to parent, parent to child to parent, it may become quite difficult for you to manage things over time. If we look at, if I'm going to take this design, the cane, okay, this is it. So this is the parents. This is the parents, and this is the add student component. Imagine that we have to add another component to do something. It means that this component has to go back to the parents, and then because the data is here, I'll put it like this. I'll put the text here. It's here. So this students is on the level of the parents. So this is the parents. I'll call it parents. This student has to send this man here, and each time this student has to be clicked, it has to send data to the parent adds it, and then the parent tells this man that I've updated. But what if there could be a store that this student, this add component can automatically talk to it without passing through the parent. This list of students can automatically read from now without passing through a parent. So more like a bigger scope where both parties, any component can be able to access it. Because remember, when you're dealing with a state, the state is only accessible at the level of the component. It is not accessible out of the component. We accept on that, right? A state can only be accessed inside a component. It cannot be accessed out of the component. But what if we have a state that all other components can be able to access? So like a central database where a component does not need to wait for the parent to send its information. The child can be able to automatically modify that component or that data without the parent's consent. So that's what we're going to be using now as a level of use context. So we're creating a context which we're going to wrap the entire application with, such that when any component wants to get access to it, the component can access the context. So it's like we're creating a general database where every other component can be able to access it without necessarily having to pass through a parent or a child. Do we get the point where we want to use context? Okay, cool. Now, I'm going to write a bit of the code and I'll explain it, because if I have to write and explain, it may be a bit, it may take a bit more time. So I'm going to write and then I explain. So I explained that this is the student provider. So this is the student's provider context. And think about it like, okay, this is the general database component. And this general database component has the students accessible to every person, has a set student, has an add student. And we're going to expose all of them with this students and add students. And we'll have a custom hook called useStudent. We'll look at the custom hook a bit after this. Now, what do we need to do with this our add students, with this our students provider? If we come to our entry point, now this is our entry point. For our entry point, what we need to do is we have to be able to say that we are going to load that context, import student provider, and we're going to wrap everything with the student provider. Let me finish and I'm going to explain a bit more about how this works. So if we come into our, let's say, list of students, let's first of all be sure that our application is working. We type, we add, we adds, we type, we adds. Now, let's start by modifying at the level of add student, because add student is one of the guys that's giving us so much headache. What we want to do is I want to be able to add students without calling the parent. I want to be able to add student automatically into the student context. So what is going to happen is I will not call this child component here. I'm going to delete this one and I'm going to do const I'll explain it to you people. Okay. Is everyone following? Just to be sure that I'm not talking alone. I'll explain. Don't worry. Nobody should get scared. I explain. What I'm saying is this. Each time I click on this button, rather than calling the child art student, remember that our famous child art student, I want to call a function called art student. And that art student is coming from the general context. It's coming from that. It's coming from that. This is it. Student context. It's coming from this. So I want to. Let me reduce this one again so that more of the focus is on the code and less on the. Yes, I'll drag this. So what I'm saying is, each time I call the art student, I want to manipulate. I'm calling this one. It's still a parent, but then it is like the parent of all parents. I don't know if I will call it like the grandparent or the godparent. Yeah, people are laughing at me. I'm struggling to figure out the right term to use here. This is how it gets a bit difficult to explain this. But if you notice, I'm no longer talking about this parent app. I'm talking about this context. I'm talking about this context. So if I click on add student, if I click on this button to add student, it is going to call this function add student, and this add student is coming from this context, add student. If I save this, I refresh the page, and I say I add student, it doesn't add. Now we're asking ourselves, why doesn't it show on the list? It does add, but the problem is, remember that we have our list of students. Let's come back to our app. Where is our list of students getting the students? It's still getting the student from this parent. We need to tell our list of students that don't look again at the level of this our parent. Look for the list of students at the level of the context. Right? Look for it at the level of the context. This list of students is picking the students from the parents, but we don't want to use this. We want to say, okay, list of students, I don't want you to pick the students again from here. I want you to pick the students from students from the context. Are we together? Now it's empty. What is happening is this. There is a context. In fact, let me call it in a very clear and understandable term. There's a database, and this is the database which every component can have access to. Think about it like an e-commerce store. On an e-commerce store, you have a cart component, you have an items component, you have a user component, you have a search component, and all of them at some point they will need to have access to one general database that has all of the information. If they don't have access to that database, it means one parent will have to pass data to the child, will have to pass data to the next child, and you end up with the concept called prop drilling, which is not a nice thing to have. So we are building now with context. So this is our database. Our database has one thing. It has students. And that student, it has a function to say that, okay, on this student, if you call the function add students, it's going to add the student. So this is what I'm exposing. Two things, students and add student. Take a pause. If somebody has a question specifically on these hooks, please unmute your mic and ask on this use context. Am I talking alone?
Sir, I have a question, sir.
Yes.
I'm not having a question, so please, how does it explain?
I'm not sure I'm hearing you. The network was breaking.
Yes, I'm asking how does it display the data?
How does it?
How does it display the data? Like the other case we use state.
Okay, how does it display the data? That's your question. Okay, how does it display the data? Let's be sure that this our stuff works first of all. Let's say Joe, Martin, Peter, Tris, Paul. It's displaying the data. Now, the question is, how does it display the data? Remember that we had on our app.jsx, we were passing this. We are no longer going to use this. We're going to have now clean everything. This one is not going to be useful again. This is not even useful. This is not useful. Now, what's happening is this app component is wrapped around the context of students. If we look at the main.jsx, this is our app component and it's wrapped around this student provider. Think about this student provider like this is the database layer that keeps track of the global state that any component that can access. Now, this database layer, what does it give you access to? This database layer gives you access to two things: students and add students. And when your students is the list of students, and add student is a function that does this job by adding a new student. So how do I get access to these students and add student? Is through this hook. We have created a hook here with useContext. We have created a hook called useContext. Somebody following me? And when I come down to any component inside, I am able to access the list of students by just saying const students is equal to use students, the use student hook. Yes, Cynthia. Cynthia, go ahead. Your hand is up. Hello, Cynthia, your hand is up. Okay, if Cynthia's okay, Lydia, Lydie. Good evening.
So, from my understanding, the reason why we are using the context, the plain context, is because the app.js is very crowded. So, it does none of those can solve the problems with the plain context.
Can you go closer to your mic? I cannot hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Closer again.
Can you hear me at all?
Thing is, we can manage.
Okay. So all I think that from my understanding, the reason why we are using the student context is because the data was very crowded. So my question is, if we are we not like transferring the problem that we face with the app.js to the student context, because student context will now be very crowded as app.js was crowded before.
Okay, that's a very good point which you've observed there. The reason why we're transferring it into the use context is not necessarily because app.jsx is crowded. It's because we want to remove the dependency of data from app.jsx to the context. Initially, initially our app.jsx was holding the students, right? And every time a component wanted to have access to the student, it has to pass through app.jsx. But now, this list of students does not need to ask the app.jsx that I want list of students. It can get it from the context. This add student doesn't need to tell app.jsx that I want to add a new student. It can get that function from the from the context. So the context is more like think about it like a database provider that tells any component that if you want this data, you don't need to pass through the parent. You can ask for it directly. You understand? So when data is being shared across multiple components, let's take for example, if there is going to be a component that does, let's say, analysis of students. If we create a component, say analysis of students, I know it doesn't really make sense, but this analysis of students can read data from the student context, and it doesn't need to rely on the app.jsx to give it the value. So the context is more like a general database layer, if you think about it in that way, that every component can have access to. You don't need to wait for the parent to give you the data. Just think about it like it's your grandfather or the earth. Let's think about it like the earth. You don't need to ask your parents permission for you to breathe. Think about air as the data. Imagine that you had to ask your parents every time that I want to breathe, they will give you air. But now there is the earth, there's the universe that has air in it. So the universe is like the context. It's like the context provider, and then air now is available in the universe. So every component, humans, animals, birds, even trees, have access to that data, which is air. So it's not dependent on the parent. Just imagine that you had to ask your father or your mother every time that you want to breathe for them to give you air. Are you getting the point? So context is more about keeping data in a place where almost all other components that are wrapped, remember, every other component that are wrapped inside this the student's provider. If I have a component here, let's say I create a component, right? Let me create another component called stray components, or stray component, yeah, .jsx. Now, if I say stray component.jsx, I do const stray component.jsx, and I just show this stray component.jsx. If I add that component inside here, that component will have access to student's provider. It means it will have access to the student. But if I add the component outside here, that component will not have access to that data. Are we together? It's feeling like this because I'm supposed to do this. It will not have access to that data. So any component that is out of it will reference stray component. Oh, okay, I did not import stray component. I need to import stray component. That's why it's failing. So this stray component, if I enter into stray component and I do const students and I put it from students, you see it is having, if I do console.log students, you see there's an error. There's an error. It's not able to, student is undefined. It's undefined like this because this stray component, it's not inside the student provider. Are we together? So immediately I move this stray component into the student provider, I save it, I refresh. You see that now we're able to see. So if I type student here, add blah blah blah, pap, you see it's showing, and we're inside stray component. So this is students in stray component, so that we can be able to see. I refresh this, I add first stud, I add. You see the data is increasing here. Second stud, the data is increasing. But then immediately I move this stray component out of the context, I save, I refresh. You see there's already a problem because the database the student provider is like the wrapper for everything. Okay, I'm having questions. I like this. Okay, let's take Tande, Lindy, and we're going to take the next person's question. Who is there? Yeah, quelqu'un? Let me speak small French. People, yeah, somebody's hand was up. Lynn, is it? I'm seeing hands have gone down. Please, if you have a question, just unmute your mic and speak now. I'm all ears. No question. Okay, if there's no question, can somebody unmute their mic and try to explain the concept of context, use context? Any person who feels like they have understood even a bit. Okay, Lydie, explain.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, though it faint, but can manage.
Okay. So first, an understanding is that first, the old way of doing things, the first way that we going through everything, each child has to receive something from the parent before being able to display it. Like you have to, you want to be able to perform an action, you have to receive from the parent. So if there's a grandchild, if the child wants to import something, you have to talk to the parent first, the grandparent first, the parent, and then the child. If there's a great grandchild, you have to go through all before you see the child. But with the student context, now the grandchild and the great grandchild can access that data directly without having to receive it from the parents or the grandparents. So there's no streaming down from the grandparents right up to the great grandchild. You can easily access it directly. So it was like I think in my mind, I think a picture is like a diagram with three boxes and an arrow from each of those boxes to the store on the right that each box can access freely in an arrow.
Beautiful. Yes. So that's you have explained it quite well, and like you just talked about something, an arrow. Let me just do this my crazy designs again. Hopefully, I'm not gonna. So if we have, let's say this is I'm gonna put a rectangle here. So this is parent 1, parent 1. Oh, what the heck? How did it? Parents. It has to pass data down to a child. Where's the arrow? So this is how it's going to be looking like. Child 1, child 2, now grandchild. So rather than saying the parent has to send data to the child, because if there's data that is available at level of the parent and this grandchild wants it, this parent must pass the data to this child and this child must pass the data to this grandchild when you don't have things like context. But then when there's context, this parent will not hold the data. The data is going to be here, so that this grandchild can access that data directly, this child can access data directly, the parent can access data directly, and we can have now a whole context. So if I put a stroke of, I put a stroke, yes, add a stroke. So everything that is wrapped around this, which is the context, can have access to this data. But then this component will not have access to this data. We understand, right? Because the component is out of this provider. It's out of this context. But if this component is added inside this context, it will have access to this data. So it means that you can have multiple contexts in your application. It doesn't mean that you have just one context. The fact that we wrapped it inside here we wrapped it here, it doesn't mean that it ends there. We can actually define another context for, let's say, since it's a student, there can be another context for courses, right? Where there's another set of the application that manages just courses, and you have things like add course, edit course, delete course, and there's a context for that. So the course context doesn't have anything to do with the student context. The student context doesn't have anything to do with the course context. Are we together? Okay. Who has a question? Who has understood? Okay. Who has not understood? Who doesn't care? Oh, I see people that don't care. Wow, I'm just wasting my time here. Okay. The next hook that we're going to look at this evening, Teke, you have a worry. I'm seeing Teke with a sad face. Teke, please ask your question, then we're going to move to Johan. Teke, please, go ahead. Teke is not happy.
Okay. I'm okay.
Okay, Take, you're okay, Take.
Yes, sir, I'm okay.
Okay. I saw Johan's hand up. Johan.
Okay, so yes, sir.
Yes.
My words at this level. Let's say we have different contexts which are actually supposed to wrap them up.
Mm-hmm.
How do we represent that? How do we represent that? Let's take, for instance, a scenario where we have to handle courses and students, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But now courses and students have to wrap up at the same time. So are we going to nest like course under student context before we wrap up inside? Or how do we do that kind of scenario? Or do we make separate divs? Like one div where course context is going to wrap up and another where student is going to wrap up? How do we manage that type of scenario?
Okay, very good question. Something I would just mention is a context must not have just one data. I can add another one. I can say const courses is equal to that, and I create a function const add course. And I'm going to, what I've done is I've created these two things. Now I want to expose it to the entire application. I'm going to come here and say comma courses, comma add course. Are you with me? So what I've done is I've added another level of data. So this is data and this is method. Data and a method to manipulate the data. I can also add another one to say const delete student, right? And I can say const delete course. And I'll expose it here. So I can add as many mutators, as many things that can change this data. So think about it like this is data and this is the manipulation, the function that can manipulate the data. So in a context, you must not have just one data value. You can have as many data values as possible. It depends on how your application is structured. That one will determine how you're going to put your context in place. Are you following? Johan? Okay, Johan is good. Nice. Now let's look
Okay.
at yes.
Please, sir. Before we go to another context, this is actually my worry. Okay, not having separate data, but separate context on its own. Like one context on its own and another one totally different. Okay, one context with students information, students data, student manipulators, student everything about the students. Okay, and one also about courses. Just
yes.
how do we handle that? Or should we merge everything in one place like this? That's the best way to do it.
Like I said, if students and courses are very independent and they don't have to talk to each other, then you can put them in separate context. It means I can create another file. I call it course context. And I come to this main.jsx and I say, this is course provider, right? And everything that is inside here will be for course. You get. But then everything inside here will not be able to access the context here. Are you following? So,
yes, sir.
So if you're creating multiple contexts like that, you will have to know that, okay, this context, they will not share the same, I don't know if I should call it space. They're in different spaces. But if you want them to share the same space, then by all means, you can put the both of them in the same file like what you have done here. But if this is not what you want to achieve, then you can move this one into a separate folder, into a separate file, and then make it work. I'm going to undo this, else it's going to crash the code. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's just be sure that it works. Now, if we look at when we type the student's name, each time we type the student's name, we have to we hit enter, we hit add, it doesn't change, and we have to come back here, click here, and remove everything, and then type again. What can we do? Somebody should tell us. What can we do? It's very boring for me to type. I add, and then I have to come back, click here, and I remove everything. So what can we do? I want to be able to remove that data automatically. Yes, I see Johan was hands up first. Johan.
I think we can bring some modifications at the level of add student component. Like once the student has added successfully, we should have maybe a kind of loop that brings us back to the previous state, to the enter student's name. I don't know if it can work like that. Like just using a loop actually.
Okay, you've heard of using a loop. Let's hear from Lydie.
So I think we can try something where you can add a function that where after the button has been clicked, it automatically clears the data right currently in the input field.
Cool. So talking about clearing the data, right? So clearing the data is what we want for now. So what we can do is we're going to define a small function here. This guy is too just add prognosis. So handle add students. Instead of just calling the add students here, we're going to cut this and say handle add students. And first thing it does is add students and it clears. Does somebody have difficulties understanding what I've just done here? This part. If you have difficulties, please indicate the changes I've just made. Okay, Javizo, Kingsley. Okay, let me explain now. When I click on this button, what should happen? It should call a function called handle students, and I've defined handle students. Handle student does two things. First of all, it calls the add student name function, and secondly, it calls the set student's name to empty string. So what is happening is this add student name is a context, is from the context. Guys, stop showing me suggestion. This add student name is from a context. And once you're done adding the student, what should you do? You should set the student's name to an empty string. Does it make sense? So two things. When I click on the add student button, you should do two things. you should call the add student method, which is coming from the context, to add a new student. After you have successfully added a new student, you should set the student's name to an empty string. It means that what you should clear it. So let's try it and see if it works. I refresh, or we'll say Martin. We add, it clears, right? Peter, it clears. Joe, it clears. Johan, it clears. Is that understood? If it's not understood, please drop a comment or unmute your mic and explain, ask what you want to ask, so that before we move to the next hook. Okay, thunderous silence means it's good. Now, let's think about this scenario. You want to add a lot of students. Each time you have to come and say name, you come and do add. And I have to still come and click back here. I type, I take add, I click back here. What if after I successfully add, the cursor should automatically focus here? That will make it better, I hope, I'm sure. What you're trying to do is you want to reduce. So I want that immediately it clears this data, it should automatically focus here. Focus here. So that if I say add students, I don't need to come back and say I'm pressing here. I add student, I don't need to come and say I'm pressing here. So this is where we have the next hook, which we are going to look at, is called useRef. Now, useRef is a hook that binds to elements. It binds to elements and it permits you to be able to do certain things on those elements. What we want is, after this button has been clicked, when it adds a student, it sets the student name to empty string. It should automatically refocus it back here. Our cursor should automatically refocus here. Are we together? Our cursor should automatically refocus here. So you can do that with a loop, with a hook called ref, useRef. Now you import it from React, the same format, useRef, and you create a new constant, const input ref is equal to useRef empty string null. Yeah. You have created this variable for the reference. Now you need to take this variable and attach it to the input component. And if I attach it to the input component, I need to just do ref is equal to input ref. If I refresh this, it's okay. Now, this reference, I'm saying that I have attached a reference to this input component. I am calling it input ref. So each time I want to do something on this component, on this input field, I can call this input ref. So I can do like this: input ref dot current dot focus. So I'm saying that add the student, set the student name to empty string, and focus it back on this reference. And the reference is the input ref is referencing the input component. Is somebody understand? Is somebody clear with this? I take it again. I want to attach a certain functionality onto this input field, and they said the functionality is simple. I want that each time that this data is added to the list and this data is cleared, I want to force this input ref, the current one, to focus. And if I save that and I come and refresh the page and I say, let's say first name Martin, I like my name very much, I click here, what do people see? It is still there, the cursor is still there, no matter the fact that I came and clicked outside. But if I remove this focus, I type Martin and I do hit, you see that the cursor is not focused. Are we together? Okay, so I want Kingsley to explain how useRef works in this context. I want Kingsley. He says he understood it. He gave a thumbs up. Kingsley, can you explain how useRef works? Yes, we can hear you. It's like you're in a noisy place. Okay, maybe Precious should try. No, Precious should explain, not try. We don't try here. Precious, I saw you giving a nice thumbs up. Can you explain how useRef works?
I'm here, sir. I'm here now, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Sir, I'm here, sir.
Okay, explain how useRef works.
Okay, based on what I understood, I got that useRef, we bind it to a particular element, and we use the case study of the input, for example, and that if you want to perform a particular action on the particular element, we use the useRef. So based on the example that you gave, if after we delete, after we add a student, normally we are expecting that or wish that the cursor should still remain on the input field, so that if we have to add another one, we will not have to click again, we'll just have to continue typing. So that helps us to be able to achieve that. And when we set it to focus, it's going to keep the cursor on that input field, no matter where we click on the page. So that's what I got.
That's good. It's as simple as that. Any other person has something to add? Yes, stand there. Tande Lindy, we cannot hear you. It shows your mic is unmuted, but I cannot hear you. So can somebody hear Tande? No. Maybe you should check your mic. Okay, we are out of time. I think we have spent a lot of the time to talk about the states, useContext, and useRef, and these are not just the hooks are not just limited to this. There are lots of other hooks. For performance and optimization, you're going to see things like use callback, use memo, and memo, which you can go and research. I'm going to pick some links online and I'm going to send it to you. So the task which I'm going to give is for you to develop that the contact app, right? Yes, I'm going to push this code to GitHub and I'll send a link to you people. So you're going to redevelop that contact app using the useRef and the useContext. So that's going to be the task. The same contact app that you people worked on is very similar to list of students, but contact app now is going to have a lot of other things. It's not just going to have name. You have name, email, phone number, and maybe some other fields. So redo your contact app using the useContext and the useRef. And I'll be looking forward to seeing codes being submitted, let's say by Friday. People are going on holidays, right? Yes. Is that okay? The next session will be on Friday. I think we'll have a session on Friday, a session on Saturday, and the next one next week. So I'll put that information on the group. Somebody wants to join now. Wow. Let's see whose that is. Okay. Thank you everyone very much. This recording will be available on YouTube after this. I'll put it on YouTube and I'll send the link to the group, so those that want to watch it can always go back and reference it alongside a link to the code. It will be on GitHub. I'll put it also on the YouTube description so that you can go. I encourage you to make use of these hooks, test it out, and be careful not to try to be the hunter that sees everything like an animal. When I say the hunter that sees everything as like an animal, it is not in all situations where you're going to use context or useRef. So as you're learning, start thinking about, okay, what are the situations where I should use normal states, and what are the situations where I should use a context. So that one is going to help you to be able to improve and make your codings better. So for the task, like I said again, the task is for you to redevelop the contact app using context and ref. So I should be able to add a contact. I should be able to edit the contact. No, let's not take edit. I should be able to see all of the contacts. I should be able to add a contact, and I should be able to delete a contact. 3 things: see contacts, add contacts, delete contacts. So if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, you're already seeing that there's a contacts provider, which is the context there. And then you have 3 components, or 2 components, an add component and a list component. Then there's a delete button somewhere. And when you click on that delete button, it calls. I'm already explaining to you how this thing gonna work. Yes, I'll write it down clearly, and then I'll send on the group so we can also have better understanding on that. Is there any final question from any person before we close the session? Okay, no questions. Thank you very much. Let's have a great evening, and the recordings will be available on the group. Take care, and bye-bye.